If I just started a new business and I wanted to sign my first 10 clients, this is the exact process that I would follow. Now, the benefit of this is it doesn't require any money, you don't need to launch ads, you don't need any complicated systems in order to do it. Now, when we look at starting a business, what's the one asset that generally, for the most part, we're rich in? We're rich in time. Generally, when we start a business, we don't have clients, we have a lot of time on our hands, and we can actually put that time to use. Instead of starting a business and having to spend loads of money on ads and loads of complicated systems, you can just follow this very simple step-by-step process in order to build a very successful client base. Now, all of the businesses that I've built throughout the numerous different years of business since I dropped out of school 7 years ago at the time of recording this has been the backbone for everything. And I think a lot of business owners, we always look at the next best thing, the next shiny object that we think that we need to use in order to grow our business, when in reality, simplicity is often the thing that will scale us most. Now, the first business that I ever started was an in-person personal training business. Now, this business eventually moved online. I built a successful online fitness business. And that online fitness business, the backbone of that, the first 6 figures that I ever earned online, fully came from this exact method. I'll give you the full SOP in today's video so you can take it, you can copy it, and you can implement it in your own business too. Now, before I walk you through the exact SOP, a big thing to note with this style of system is a lot of people will watch this. They'll think it's a good idea, but they won't action it. And the reality is, if we want to make money in business, we have to action things. So follow along, pause the video, implement as you go, and if you do so, by the end of this video, you will have a fully built out lead gen system that will help you sign your next 10 clients and actually start building a very profitable business. Now, if we look at anything in business that we want to be successful with, we need to have it systemized. There's no point us doing something, not documenting it, because when we get to a point that we want to delegate it and offload it, we are going to be stuck doing that forever. Instead, if we systemize it and create a step-by-step process that's easy then for someone else to follow, it means that once it's profitable, once we've learned how to do it, we can easily offload it and train another staff member to do it instead of us. Now, the way that we do this is we just have a simple step-by-step process. When we look at creating SOPs, it doesn't need to be something ridiculously complex and ridiculously confusing. It can literally just be a Google document with the steps to follow. Now, a big thing with this outreach process, this organic outreach process, is us initially choosing the platform that we want to use to begin with. For the most part, for the businesses that I've ran over the last few years, we've always started with Instagram because it's an incredibly profitable platform to run something like this on. And it's a very easy platform to find your ideal clients. So let's dive into it. First thing is we lay out the time blocks. So the cool thing with this is we can scale this out across numerous different times. Now, when we're doing any organic outreach process, we have to realize that Facebook, Instagram, whatever platform you're doing it on, will sometimes limit the amount of outreach that we do. They'll sometimes put limits on the amount of follows that we can make, the number of messages that we can send, the number of likes that we can send. So what we want to do is we want to break this up. A lot of the time, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to get more volume just by breaking this up throughout the day. So instead of us coming in and just sending hundreds of messages and thousands of follows in one go, if we break this up into different blocks, it means that we can push the daily limit a little bit more and push more volume. And with more volume, as long as the volume's done right, we have a higher probability of having success than if we did less volume. A lot of the time, this is a numbers game. I'm not just saying coming in here and spamming loads. I'll show you the way that we do it. So we build out time blocks, and that then means that certain staff members who are managing that will run this at that certain time, and you can then build out a few more blocks as well, as long as there's gaps in between each of these actions. Now, what we've then done is we've then scaled this out across 3 different accounts on Instagram. So one account that has different limits on. So a big thing with social media platforms is different accounts. So my account might have a different limit to yours because we've essentially warmed that account up. If you come in and you've never done any outreach and all of a sudden you do loads, chances are your account will flag. Whereas if you gradually build it up and that becomes the new norm, then your account's generally a lot more happy with working at that level of volume. So when we look at this, we break down essentially the KPIs across the day. And what we do is we break this out across 3 accounts. So each account then has KPIs that needs to be hit. For example, the number of stories that we react to, the number of accounts that we follow, the number of photos that we like, and the number of posts that we comment on. That's then essentially the daily target for each account that we then split out across these time zones. Now, a huge thing with this is do not come in and just push these sort of KPIs to start with. We've gradually built up to that. So even if you start off on the lower end at 10, 20 per one, split out across the day, you can then gradually over a matter of weeks build that up. And you're probably going to say, well, this isn't really going to make me any money. How is that going to make me money? Well, let me explain. When we look at reacting to people's stories, we're essentially reacting with an emoji. When we look at following people, we're obviously just following. When we like posts, we like them. When we comment something specific to that post. A lot of the time, people then get that notification or get that follow, and it creates intrigue, and they click through onto our page. When they click through onto our page, there will be a percentage of people that are intrigued and will follow us because they're interested in what we have, essentially content that we're posting. They're interested in the content that we're posting. They follow our page. When they follow our page, that then means that we can then message us. We've split tested this numerous amounts, and we've found a far higher conversion rate and a far better use of our time. Instead of just messaging loads of cold prospects, messaging those that follow back. So our goal here is to engage on the social media platform with very specific actions. So when we're reacting to stories, we generally would only do like a clapping emoji or a fire emoji, but obviously that's specific to how you generally react to people's stories. And the cool thing with that is we're not just reacting to generic stories. What we're doing is we're reacting to specific account stories, which I'll show you in a second. What we can then see is the consistency plays out across the week. Then it means across a week, every single account, we're then pushing a series of volume once we've built up to that. And then across the weekly totals and monthly average, we're pushing a huge amount of engagement. And as a result, we then get followers back from that because people are seeing our account. What we then want to make sure we do though, is we want to make sure that when we're sending these reactions, these follows and these likes and comments, that they're coming from specific targeted accounts. Now, when we look at anything in outreach, I always think that we need to systemize everything so we can track it. If we go in and we just say, well, we're just going to outreach from loads of random accounts, we then don't know which account brings us good quality followers. Instead, if we make it really clear on the types of accounts that we're doing outreach from, it's then going to be a lot easier for us to know which accounts are bringing in the best quality leads. For example, on the Georgia account, we would then list out competitors of mine. We'd list out competitors and we'd have all of their Instagram handles laid out. And then what we might know is we might know that all of our ideal clients, in their bio, in their name, in their username, they have a certain phrase. For example, if we're looking to target fitness coaches, we might then search for fitness. So we would go onto one of the competitors' accounts, go into their followers, and then search for fitness. That would then show us all of the fitness coaches that are following that competitor of ours. We can then go through this process of reacting to one of their stories and then onto the next account. Then we can follow 60, then we can like, then we can comment. And a big thing, do not do this volume to start with. You need to gradually build it up by starting really low. We can then follow that process for the George account, for the automations account, for the systemized scale account, splitting this daily volume across the number of shifts that we're doing. And then across the month, we then hit all of this amount of volume. We then get a percentage of people that will then follow back from a story reaction. They might then even start a conversation. If the follows, they might follow back from the likes of the comments. We then pull people across onto our page. This then means that we have a series of people that might reply, a series of people that might follow, and then what it also means is when we run ads down the line, we can retarget all of these people too. So we essentially are pulling people into our world without us having to spend ads. It's completely free, and the only thing that we're paying with is our time, which probably isn't a scarce resource when we first start our business. But the cool thing with this is then something that once it's working and once it's got proof of concept for you, you can then give this SOP to a staff member and you can delegate it because you've structured it from the start. Now, in order for us to delegate that, what we then want to do is we want to have a series of steps that staff member will follow when they do this outreach process. So the first thing that they always do when they come in is they reply to any outstanding messages, so they clear the inbox. Then they reply to any comments, Then they send any follow-up messages. So we then have a series of follow-ups that we will then have in place for new followers or when conversations go dead. For example, we might then message a new follower. If they don't reply, we follow up again. If they don't reply, we follow up one more time. When we're in a conversation with someone and maybe we get to the point of offering them a call, if they then don't book a call, we then have a series of follow-ups. And a really cool thing with this is if you do a 3-step follow-up process where you send your first message, if they don't reply, you follow up again, then that third message is a GIF. A GIF works incredibly well if it's a funny GIF because it creates emotion. People see that you're a real person rather than just a robot typing away messages. Also, what you'll find gets really good response is having voice notes. And what you can then do is you can actually record voice notes. So you could send a voice note to a certain account, but then you can choose to forward that voice note on. So what it then means is instead of you having to constantly record new voice notes for every single lead or delegate someone in to do your DMs and then you having to jump in and voice note, you can voice note one person as a generalized voice note and you can forward it on. So you can then have numerous different voice notes for different follow-ups so that then it's easy for that staff member to forward that on. And a really good thing with this is the new follower message and the follow-ups, we want to be essentially systemized. We want the same types of follow-ups and new follow messages across the board because then we can track what works, what doesn't, and change it. And then of course the actual conversation is like a fluid conversation depending on obviously what we're talking about with the lead. Of course there's a bit of a script that we follow, but that obviously changes conversation to conversation, whereas the follow-up messages and the new follow-up messages, they're very much sort of scripted and adapted a little bit to the conversation, but then it means that we can see which are working, which aren't. Then we can actually track data and improve. Now, once follow-up messages are sent, we then get the staff member to go onto one of the accounts listed above, go into their followers, search for the key phrase, and then obviously go through the process of doing the number of follows, then doing the emoji reactions, etc., etc. That's then split out across a work block, and then that is repeated 3 times in a work block. And of course, you could then add more shifts as you build up your volume. And then that way, we are literally starting conversations for free without needing to pay for ads, and we're only giving up our time. The other way that we can look at doing this to feed more followers so we can start more conversations is using trial reels. On platforms like Instagram, we can post trial reels, which are essentially reels that we post that do not show to our followers. The cool thing with this is it won't show on your grid, it will only show to non-followers, so it's not like a normal post where you have to worry about posting loads on your grid and making your grid look full. Instead, you can post as many trial reels as you want. They are cramping down a little bit, putting a limit on that, generally around 20 a day. However, this means you can test. So you can then post trial reels and you can post a piece of content that you think will perform and you can post numerous variations of it. Instead of having to refilm the content loads of times, you can just refilm the hook at the start for 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, and post that variation. Post them, you can then see which performs best, and the one that performs best, you can then choose to move it to organic, and then it will show up on your grid after that. But what it means is it's only going to show for non-followers first, bring you in new awareness and new followers, and then go onto your grid already with engagement as well. It's a really good way of allowing us to test creatives first. 1, before we post them organically, 2, before we put them as an ad, and also it means that we can actually do volume instead of just being able to post a couple times a day. In addition to that, what we can then do is we can just use B-roll clips. So a big thing with Instagram is we want retention on our content. If we've got a really long piece of content and someone then watches the first 2 seconds and then leaves the rest of the video at 60 seconds, we're not really going to get much engagement on that. Whereas if the video is 4 seconds and they watch the 4 seconds and then it loops and loops and loops, we're going to have a higher chance of that video then being pushed out to people. So what works really well with trial reels is using B-roll clips. So filming B-roll clips, having a 4 to 5 second B-roll clip, putting some text on it and then posting it. And then you can easily split test the text on it or the video on it, and then the ones that perform best, you can also then move organic too. Now, another really important point to sort of note with this is we want to set criteria for the accounts. So the accounts that we have here, we want to set a criteria of all of the bullet points that they must fall on under. And then also based off the calls that this assistant, this virtual assistant, this staff member has booked before, they want to follow the same sort of criteria. So what we're essentially trying to do is qualify these leads. So instead of us just going in and following, liking, and engaging with random accounts, instead we want to have criterias of what they fit. So for example, they might have to have a certain number of follows. They might have to have a certain number of posts on their grid. They might have to have a recent amount of activity on their stories. Whatever the criteria must be, based off what you see your ideal clients having, you can list out that criteria. So then when we're following, engaging, commenting, liking, we can make sure that those accounts actually fit that criteria for us. What we then want to do is we want to go down and we want to then give an end of work block process where they open the spreadsheet, they track data, they move things around the spreadsheet accordingly, and then obviously put any questions in the Slack channel for things to get answered. And I think a big thing with this is when you've got a staff member in this role, you need to make sure that one, you're looking at the data. So when the data gets tracked, it's pointless just having data if you're not going to read it. So we want to review that data every day. And then any questions that they have, we want them to feel able to flag it and not just sit on it, because if they sit on it, they're probably not going to do a good job because they're probably going to be answering wrong. What we then want to do down here is we want to set this as a necessity, as a non-negotiable. A lot of the time you'll find when people are managing roles like this, they do the role, but they don't track the data. So if you set it as a necessity and it's the thing that they do when they end their work block or throughout their work block, that's how you get them to oblige to it. And it's a non-negotiable. If they don't do it, then they don't keep doing the job, because it's pointless doing the job if you're not tracking the data to go alongside it, because you can't manage it. Then down here, what we want to do is we want to then word out our specific follow-up messages and then give any free resource links, so that it means that one, we've got the follow-up messages and the new follow messages scripted out. So then it's easy for the assistant to then use these. We can track the performance of these and edit accordingly. And then we have any free resources linked. So instead of a lead maybe not booking in a call or purchasing, we can then, instead of just letting them go, we can send them a free lead magnet, get them to opt in, get them into our email list. And then we've got numerous different videos on this channel showing you how to use AI to run your email list too. So then you can actually sell to them instead of them just sitting there. What you'll then also find with email is one of those platforms that you probably won't make money straight away, but it's the long-term trust that goes with email. If you can get people on your email list, you own that asset instead of it being stuck on a social media platform. And it means that you can then sell to them time and time again, and you can then move them around your different social media platforms. For example, onto YouTube, longer form content, back onto Instagram, into DMs. It's an incredible asset. So instead of just letting leads slip away, offer them a lead magnet, offer them a free resource, get them to opt in, and then they're now in your ecosystem. If you follow that step-by-step process, it seems simple. It doesn't seem like it would grow your business that drastically, but I guarantee you, if you are consistent with it, not for a day, not for 2 days, not for 2 weeks, but for months on end, you will build a profitable business and start consistently signing clients without any need to spend any ad budget.